Hey guys, tonight we're dusting off some ancient stories, literally. You're standing at the edge of the Giza plateau, just before sunrise, squinting against the first golden light that glances off the side of a pyramid so vast, it eats up your field of vision. Your job today, maintain it, not build it, not marvel at it. Nope. Your task is far less glamorous and somehow much dustier. You're an apprentice in the sacred and often sneezed upon art of pyramid maintenance, and your shift begins before the ibis even stretch. Your first tool, a feather duster, longer than your forearm and surprisingly fluffy, despite the fact that it's made from ostrich feathers, bound with twine, and blessed allegedly by the high priest of surface shine. The sandstone steps beneath your sandals are already warm, holding on to the heat from yesterday. You adjust the sash of your linen wrap, climb onto a precarious scaffold made of acacia poles, and begin your slow, deliberate pass over the southern-facing corner block. You're expected to move in gentle circular motions, with the grace of a worshipper and the arm strength of someone who absolutely skipped gym day, no pressure. But this block alone weighs several tons, and you're responsible for making sure it's dust-free before the vizier's inspection. You probably won't survive this, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments side. Love to know who else is feather dusting history with us tonight. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You swipe carefully along the edge of a carving that's worn almost smooth, a symbol of Ra, the sun god, partially buried under grit. Above you, a fellow apprentice hums off-key, dangling precariously from a makeshift rope harness that probably wasn't inspected by any kind of ancient OSHA. The truth is, pyramid maintenance isn't just dusting. There's bird poop. There's sand, so much sand. There's even, bizarrely, the occasional banana peel, which no one quite knows how to explain since bananas weren't introduced to Egypt until way later. Some suspect time travelers. Others suspect high priests with very odd dietary quirks. You were told by your instructor, an elderly man with a voice like gravel and honey, that the first hour of the morning is the most divinely blessed. For cleaning, something about how the early sun scares off evil spirits and gives better visibility for smudge detection. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians actually maintained the pyramids regularly, or if the whole thing is a modern, romanticized idea. But here you are, living proof that someone's doing it. A hawk circles above, probably judging your feathering technique. You notice the delicate puff of dust blooming under your strokes, and you remember to exhale through your nose lest you want to breathe in 5 centuries of funerary funk. Your next task, the seams. See, when the blocks were placed, some genius left millimeter-wide gaps that collect everything from spiderwebs to birthday wishes, scrawled by some long-dead overseer. You slide a thin reed brush between the stones, catching a flake of what might be ancient beeswax, or just last week's lunch. Below, the head maintenance scribe unrolls a papyrus scroll covered in tiny checkboxes, and even tinier handwriting. It's your job to clear the East Corridor lintel block 147C. You nod solemnly, pretending you understand where that is, then begin the awkward shuffle down the pyramid face, feet seeking solid purchase. One false step and you'll be face first in a camel paddock. Again, your mentor waits near the base with a waterskin and a look of permanent disappointment. He motions for you to sit on a shaded rock and hydrate while he mutters about the good old days, when duster feathers were imported from royal ostriches who listened to music during molting. A mainstream fact most folks don't know: the outer casing stones of the Great Pyramid were originally polished Torah limestone, gleaming so brightly they reflected the sun. Legend says you could see them shine from miles away, like a divine lighthouse built for the gods. These casing stones are mostly gone now, stripped for mosques, palaces, and other more practical things, but your role today is to honor that original vision. Shine it up, feather it down, keep the gods smiling. As you rinse your hands in a basin that smells faintly of hibiscus, you hear someone shout. A group of foreign merchants has wandered too close, gaping and pointing and asking whether they can climb to the top. You offer them your dust rag as a joke. They do not laugh. By midday, your arms ache. The sun now scorches the very breath from your lungs, but you trudge onward, past a carving of Anubis sniffing a ceremonial shoe, past a chunk of stone where someone once carved Pitak was here. You smooth it over with a paste made of crushed date seeds and limestone powder that'll teach him. You finish your shift perched near the western face, watching the sky melt into gold and then purple. The breeze finally arrives, carrying the scent of cumin and something roasting. Possibly goat, possibly not. You descend slowly, feet dust-covered, feather duster limp in your hand. You pass a relief carving showing a group of servants, some carrying fans, others holding what looks suspiciously like feather dusters. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe your job goes back farther than you thought. As you reach the ground, you glance back at the colossal structure looming behind you. One tiny smear of shine glints near the summit where you worked this morning. A speck of brightness on a mountain of stone, and tomorrow, you'll do it all over again. You drag yourself into the All-Feather Guild's courtyard the next morning, blinking at the wall of plumage that greets you. Here, the feather handlers gather like robed peacocks, strutting beneath long silk canopies that ripple dramatically even in the absence of wind. The smell of lavender oil and roasted barley clings to the warm air, and someone is already arguing over whether heron or ibis feathers offer a better glide across limestone. You nod politely to an older duster named Sutek, who once claimed to have polished the tip of Kafir's pyramid using nothing but 3 sacred pheasant plumes and a prayer. He also claimed to have met a cat who spoke fluent Greek, so, grain of salt, this is your first week as an official junior duster, and you're learning fast that the All-Feather Guild is less about actual cleaning and more about drama. The head of the guild, a man named Hemni, who wears 6 different feathered capes, depending on the sun's position, steps forward with theatrical solemnity. He lifts a golden feather duster from a carved cedar box. It's the ceremonial model, rarely used, allegedly made from the tail feathers of a swan who once nested in the lap of Hathor. Probably a myth. Still, when Hemni waves it overhead, everyone bows as if Ra himself were descending for inspection. Your own duster is more modest ostrich feather, wrapped in linen cord, dipped in lemon balm extract to repel beetles. The tip flutters gently. As you walk toward your assigned post, you pass under a banner stitched with the guild's motto: soft touch, firm faith, fewer cobwebs. Today you're assisting the mid-tier polishers. These are the folks who focus less on dusting and more on creating that elusive, sacred gleam that priests claim helps the soul of the deceased ascend faster. It's unclear whether that's just a marketing pitch or actual theology. Historians still argue whether the gleaming outer layers had spiritual meaning or were just architectural flexing. Hemni watches you closely as you swirl the duster. In perfect arcs. Your circles are too wide, he murmurs. Tighter wrist. Think like a falcon landing on its prey. You don't know what that means, but you tighten your grip anyway. A mainstream historical fact here. The ancient Egyptians actually had guilds for just about everything: embalmers, stonemasons, perfumers. It wouldn't be entirely surprising if there was a real group in charge of preserving or maintaining sacred structures, even if no papyrus has outright confirmed a pyramid cleaning crew. Still, in this courtyard of fluff and flair, it feels plausible. The feather have routines, rituals, and rivalries. The rivalries. There's a loud squawk as two junior feather-bearers get into a heated debate over the proper way to store stork quills. One insists they must hang vertically to preserve softness. The other swears by airtight papyrus tubes filled with rose petals. You try not to stare as one of them hurls a dust rag dramatically into a bowl of incense at lunchtime. The guild gathers around shared platters of dates, lentils, and honeyed bread shaped like tiny pyramids. Someone's brought pickled onions again, and everyone groans, knowing what that will do to breath levels during close-quarter polishing. You take a bite and glance around the courtyard. The tapestries here depict legendary cleaning miracles. A spotless obelisk after a sandstorm, a cobweb removed without waking the sacred bat that made it. One faded mural shows a high priest balancing on a scaffolding, feather duster in one hand, scroll of prayers in the other, while two terrified apprentices hold the latter. Feathering is more than technique, Hemni says later, watching you struggle to dust a carved vulture's wingtip. It is legacy. These pyramids are not just tombs. They are mirrors of heaven. We polish the stars from the stone. You nod solemnly while wondering if this vulture had 3 wings, or if someone just carved an extra by mistake. Later, you're tasked with helping to inspect and replenish the sacred feather storage room. It's located in a cool, shadowed annex near the pyramid base, guarded by a cat named Meanies, who sleeps directly on the inventory scroll. You gently lift his paw to check for quill counts. Inside the room are bundles of feathers tied with colored threads: green for ostrich, blue for peacock, very rare, and red for ibis. One entire shelf is devoted to experimental materials, including palm fronds, snakeskin failed, and something that looks suspiciously like a shredded wig. Quirkily enough, a side chamber has a tiny shrine to the first feather, said to have floated down from the sky during the pyramid's completion ceremony. It's displayed under glass, surrounded by dried lotus petals. And everyone insists it still sways slightly despite no wind. You watch it closely. It does not sway. Hemni returns near sunset, flanked by his twin assistants who carry mini dusters. Like royal scepters, he claps once, and the whole guild forms a loose semicircle. Tomorrow, he announces, we polish the eastern slope for moonlight shimmer. Senior crews only. Apprentices will remain on floor duty. He glances at you. Unless someone volunteers for rope work. You gulp. Rope work means dangling off the pyramid face like an overly ambitious spider, feathering by feel more than sight, but also bragging rights. You raise your hand. Hemni nods with a smile that suggests either pride or amusement or maybe both. That night, you oil your duster carefully. Say a small prayer to Thoth for steady hands, and try to sleep. But your dreams are full of feathers. So many feathers. And one vulture who keeps insisting you missed a spot behind the sacred cobra's ear. You rise before dawn with sand in your sandals, grime in your teeth, and ambition in your heart. Rope. Workday has arrived. You munch a quick breakfast of dry barley flatbread and fig paste, then hustle out toward the pyramid's eastern face with your duster, your flask of date water, and your last-minute doubts all jostling for space in your satset. The sun is just starting to smudge the sky with lemony streaks. Already, the eastern slope is bathed in gold, the kind of soft glow that makes stone look like melted butter. It's beautiful, really, but also absolutely coated in dust. So much dust. Enough dust to start your own miniature dessert. Enough that you wonder, not for the first time, whether the Great Pyramid is secretly just one big sand sponge. As you get roped in literally, the harness digs a bit too enthusiastically into your hips. You give the rope team a thumbs up. They nod with the bored confidence of people who've seen too many apprentices dangle upside down their first day. One guy's carving tiny crocodiles into the side of his boot. Another is drinking something that looks suspiciously fermented. You step carefully onto the platform. It's made of palm wood and lashed together with more optimism than engineering. Below you, the ground disappears into distance. Above you, a wall of stone climbs toward the sky. You glance down one more time and remember Hemni's words. Think like a falcon landing on prey. You're not sure you feel falconish. You feel more like a goat on a roof. A gentle tug, and you're hoisted upward. The moment you reach position, the wind kicks up. Of course, a gust of warm, dry air blows straight into your face, sending a flurry of grit down your collar and across your lips. You sputter and cling to your feather duster like it's your only friend, which it kind of is. Today, your task is straightforward. Clean the eastern slope for maximum morning shimmer. This part of the pyramid was originally covered in polished Torah limestone, so fine and pale it once glowed white in the sunlight. And some scholars believe the Egyptians wanted it to gleam, possibly as a symbol of the sun's eternal cycle, or to guide spirits of the dead toward Osiris. Historians still argue whether this shimmering finish was intentional symbolism, or just an accidental architectural flex that caught on like pyramid-shaped bread. Either way, your job is to bring that glimmer back, one feathered swipe at a time. You begin slowly. The dust is fine, clinging like soft clay in some places, and crusty in others. You swirl in your newly practiced tight circles, keeping one hand on the stabilizing line and another brushing. You hum to yourself, mostly to stay calmed. Imagine you're painting with air. Every once in a while, your duster uncovers something strange. A carving of a bird with 4 legs. A scratch in the stone that looks suspiciously like someone was counting the days until vacation. And once, most unsettlingly, a handprint, fresh-looking, smaller than yours. You pause, squint. It's probably just someone else's leftover polish pattern. Probably you keep brushing. A buzz of excitement ripples up from below. Hemni is shouting about an approaching sand front. You glance east and spot the telltale haze, like a veil descending over the desert. Sandstorms, the eternal enemy of pyramid maintenance. You duck your head as the first grains lash your cheek. It's like being slapped by a million tiny fists made of ancient regret. You cover your face with a strip of linen and keep working. What else can you do? Even as sand undoes your every motion, you keep swirling, polishing, wiping. Like a janitor in a glass factory during an earthquake. At some point, a fellow apprentice swings down near you on another rope. He grins, covered in grit, and shouts, "Over the wind, bet it's all dusty again tomorrow." You nod. Yep, but it's shiny right now. That counts, right? You work until the sun is high and the heat turns everything amber. By the time you're lowered back to earth, your arms ache like overcooked reeds, and your mouth tastes like salted sandstone. You sit in the shade, gasping, your duster tucked under your arm like a sleeping cat. Hemni walks over and claps you on the back. You shimmered, kid, you shimmered. You grin, despite the sand in your teeth. Later, in the cool of the storage courtyard, you unstrap your harness and hang your duster back on its peg. A few of the other apprentices are already soaking their feet in basins of lavender water. Someone's passing around honey-roasted locusts. You take one, crunchy, unexpectedly spicy. As the wind outside settles, you notice that the eastern face is gleaming. Just slightly, not a mirror, not a beacon, but enough to catch the eye of anyone walking past and make them wonder, did that thing just shine at me? There's something comforting in the absurdity of it all. All this effort, all this ritual and elbow grease for a few hours of glimmer. But somehow, it feels important. Maybe that's the point. To do something not because it lasts, but because it means something right now. You lean back on the stone bench, stretch your legs, and let your thoughts drift like feather dust in the sun. You might never build a pyramid, but you'll keep it. Gleaming dot, one absurd. Beautiful brushstroke at a time. You begin the next day with the scent of coconut oil tickling your nose and a clay jar labeled Shine Mix A3 wobbling in your arms. Today, you're on Polish duty. And that means working with ancient Egyptian formulas designed allegedly to make stones so radiant it could distract a falcon mid-flight. Some say this mixture was sacred. Others say it was just glorified hand lotion that got wildly out of hand. The pyramid looms ahead, its shadow stretching long over the sand like a sleepy lion. You head toward the northern face, where sunlight barely touches before noon. This is where the oils are applied to help awaken the stone. That's what Hemni calls it. You suspect it's also where they send apprentices so the priests don't have to smell the formula fermenting under the sun. You unscrew the jar's lid and nearly gag. The smell is ... complex. Earthy, sour. A little like coconut, a little like olives, and a lot like something that's been left too long in a chariot trunk. You scoop out a pale glop with your palm. It's thick, like wet beeswax, and oddly warm, even though it hasn't seen sun all morning. You smooth it across the limestone block in front of you, using broad, circular strokes. The oil seeps into the stone's surface, turning it from a chalky beige to a deep, buttery gold. Someone down the line mutters, "Careful not to overgrease. We lost 2 sandals last week." A mainstream historical fact worth remembering. The ancient Egyptians used a variety of oils in both personal grooming and ceremonial practice. Coconut oil, imported in later periods, was sometimes mixed with crushed minerals, natron, or even powdered alabaster to preserve stone surfaces and scent tombs. The line between cleaning and anointing often blurred. You rub the block until your arm cramps. The sun inches higher, and now the heat is baking the polish into the stone, releasing wafts of, well, something herbal and musky. Hemni passes by, sniffing the air. Too much ibex spit, he declares. Next batch needs more lotus. You blink, wait, ibex spit. He raises an eyebrow. Only the freshest, quirky as it sounds. There's a persistent rumor in the guild that one of the earliest polish mixtures involves saliva from a sacred ibex herd kept near Thebes. Supposedly, the enzymes reacted with crushed limestone in a way that made the blocks sing when polished. You've never heard them sing, but you have heard someone sneeze so hard they fell off the scaffolding, which might count by midday. Your hands are slick, your tunic stained with mysterious swirls, and your face coated in a thin, sticky sheen of aromatic oils. Someone hands you a piece of bread to wipe your hands on. You stare at them in confusion until they add, "It's a cleaning bread, not for eating." You sigh with relief and then concern when you realize it's not the first time someone's confused the two. The next polishing station over is run by an older woman named Nettie, who's known for her custom shine blends. Her secret ingredient, crushed chrysanthemum petals. She claims they soften the light. She also claims her mix once caused a priest to faint from the brilliance, though that may have had more to do with dehydration. You work side by side with her for a while, learning how to layer polish in alternating vertical and horizontal strokes. She hums while she works a low, rhythmic tune that somehow makes the sun feel less cruel. At one point, she shows you a scar on her wrist. Over-polished a pharaoh's eyebrow once, she says, wincing. Didn't sit right in the carving. Had to resand it. And guess who got cursed with 100 papyrus forms? You nod gravely. Paperwork curses are the worst, as the afternoon heat mounts. You retreat into the shade of a side chapel built into the pyramid's base. Here, under the stone arch, jars of older polish mixes are stored, each labeled with date, ingredients, and intended use. One reads for ceremonial gleam, only do not eat. You don't ask. Among the older recipes, you find one scroll that mentions moonstone dust. It claims the priests once experimented with it, believing it might absorb and radiate moonlight better than any oil or wax. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians actually used exotic minerals like this in pyramid upkeep, or if the scrolls are just the ancient version of Instagram wellness hacks. But in your oil-smudged hands, the possibility feels real. You're called back to your post just as the vizier makes his surprise inspection round. His expression is as neutral as a granite sphinx, but you notice his nose twitch as he sniffs the air. He pauses in front of your recently polished block, lotus, and something else, he says. You freeze. Is that ibex? You nod slowly. He tilts his head, then nods back. You're learning, he mutters, before vanishing behind a column like an overworked desert ghost. Later, as the last polish is applied, and the sun dips behind the western dunes, You sit on the stone steps with your arms slick and shimmering. The block in front of you catches the final rays of light and reflects them like a mirror. Remembered, the effort was ridiculous. The ingredients were weird. The results, honestly kind of spectacular. You lean back and close your eyes, smelling faint traces of coconut, lotus, and the mysterious tang of ibex legend, and then a breeze kicks up, blowing a fresh layer of dust. Across the block you just spent 6 hours polishing. Of course it does. The next morning begins with a scroll and a scowl. You're summoned before the royal vizier, not for punishment, thankfully, but for your first inclusion on the weekly inspection circuit. It's a rite of passage for pyramid workers, where you walk alongside one of the palace's most persnickety officials while they point at things and mutter vague disappointments like, and well, that's not ideal. You're handed the official maintenance checklist, which is longer than your arm and smells faintly of goat parchment and panic. At the top, it reads, Pyramid 1, Weekly Observations and Shine Evaluation, Vizier Jedin Small. Tight handwriting beneath it. Check for cobwebs, lint. Bird residue. Verify scent levels in sacred corridors. Confirm dust-free status of corners, alcoves. Lintels smiled deferentially while being blamed for whether your feather duster is freshly your tunic is only mildly oil-stained, and your sandals are still damp from being ritually deodorized in vinegar water. This is it. Your first inspection. You will not disappoint. You follow Vizier, Jed, a tall, angular man who walks like he's trying not to touch the ground around the southern base. He stops abruptly in front of a corner joint and crouches like a cat about to pounce. You lean forward, heart pounding. There, he says, pointing. You squint. There appears to be a pebble the size of a lentil wedged between 2 limestone blocks. Unacceptable, he hisses. You could park a whole scarab in that gap. You scribble on your scroll and nod like this is the greatest insight you've ever heard. He moves on, cape billowing like a thundercloud, muttering under his breath about how standards have declined since the 5th dynasty. A mainstream fact floats to mind, oddly calming. Many viziers in ancient Egypt functioned as administrative powerhouses. They oversaw construction, religious festivals, court records, and yes, even pyramid upkeep. Though the idea of them doing literal dust inspections is debatable, their involvement in maintenance logistics is well documented. DJET pauses again. This time, he sniffs. Do you smell that? He asks. You sniff. Dust, sweat, possibly myrrh. No, you say, cautiously. He frowns. Exactly. No incense, no lotus. The scent profile is missing. You jot that down. Scent profile missing. Add lotus. Add emotion. He snaps. Visitors must feel transcendence, not mildew. You resist the urge to suggest transcendence. Is difficult when the weather smells like roasted ibex. Instead, you follow him into a narrow corridor that opens into the antechamber of eternal Sheena, name that overpromises, given how cobwebby it actually is. You glance up. A spider the size of a hazelnut stares back. You swat the web gently with your feather duster. The spider scuttles into a corner and pretends to be part of a carving. Jet says again. This time, his tone is darker. He walks to a lip beam and drags one long finger along its underside. He holds the dusty fingertip up like a divine judgment. You brace for impact. But then, he sighs. Better than last week, You exhale. Your heart restarts. Quirky detail of the day. In a side alcove, you find a tiny carved falcon wearing what appears to be a feathered headdress. You nudge your partner. Is that Ra's chicken? No, he whispers. That's the temple chicken of responsibility. This particular figure, barely 10 centimeters tall, is apparently a mascot for the guild. Someone once claimed that if you polish the niche under its beak, you'll pass your inspection for the next 7 days. You quietly do just that, while Jet is examining a suspiciously squeaky stair. You rejoin the tour as he reaches the eastern staircase, where the real drama usually happens. This is the section where multiple crews overlap. Stonemasons reinforcing steps, scent handlers wafting incense, even a stray librarian making notes on hieroglyph consistency. Jet pauses again, this time inspecting a shallow groove in the floor. Who let a goat walk here? He asks sharply. You check the scroll. Goat pathways are technically permitted 2 cubits to the left. Possible deviation due to sunstroke. You offer helpfully. He grunts and makes a note in his own black scroll, the one no one is ever allowed to read. You finally reach the final checkpoint, a recessed altar slab polished until it reflects like water. You hold your breath. He kneels, places one palm on the surface, and closes his eyes. This goes on for an awkward amount of time. Finally, he opens his eyes. Not bad. He turns and walks away. You let out a long sigh and collapse onto the sun-warmed stones. Your partner hands you a small ceramic jug of mint water. You take a sip and instantly regret it's definitely not mint. Possibly vinegar. Possibly tears. As you relax, someone brings the final inspection tally. Dust, acceptable. Scent, questionable, pending lotus infusion. Cobwebs, minor. No complaints from priests. Goat incident, under review. Overall, satisfactory, with room for transcendence. You beam with pride. Being on the checklist team means more responsibility, sure, but also more respect. Tomorrow, you might even get to suggest which corridor needs bat removal first. That's practically promotion level. You lie back against the cool stone feather duster tucked under your head like a lumpy pillow, and stare up at the triangular shadow of the pyramid stretching into the clouds. There's still more dust to clear, more shine to restore, and definitely more ibex to dodge, but today you made it through the scroll, and you lived to polish another day. You're halfway through your morning sweep of the inner chambers when you hear the unmistakable flutter of wings and the echoing screech of something not entirely pleased. You freeze mid-feather stroke. It's happening again. The creatures have returned. Not the curses. Not the ghosts. No, this is far worse. The pyramid's animal residence. The place may have been built to honor kings and carry souls into the afterlife. But in the meantime, it's home to a rotating cast of very much alive squatters. Bats, bees, birds. A lizard once. One very confused goat. You've seen things today. Your nemesis takes the form of a particularly aggressive ibis that's built a nest in one of the upper alcoves near the solar offering hall. You've named him Toth Jr. because of his sacred status and very judgmental eyes. He's currently flapping like an angry scroll, squawking down at you as you try to dust beneath his ledge. I'm not touching the nest. You whisper up, just the little. The ibis does not negotiate. You back away, arms raised, feather duster held like a shield. This isn't your first encounter. The pyramid attracts all manner of wildlife drawn by the shelter, the elevation, and, apparently, the prestige. There's a family of bees in a hollow sun disk over the north wall. No one has the heart to move them because they're probably sacred, and also, they sting. A fun, mainstream historical fact. Ancient Egyptians did revere animals deeply. Creatures were linked to gods, and temples often housed them. Ibis birds were linked to Thoth, the god of wisdom, and their mummified remains have been found by the thousands. But historians still argue whether any lived inside pyramid spaces, or just near temple grounds. You suspect the current residents are less sacred avatars and more freeloading squatters. You resume your work, carefully circling a patch of discolored stone. As you swipe, something small and fast darts across the floor behind you. You flinch, spin around, and spot a blur. Something with 4 legs and a tail. You're not alone. Moments later, one of your fellow featherers appears, panting. The sacred mongoose is back. The what now, you know. The one that nested in the chamber of echoes. Ate 2 baskets of ceremonial figs last week. Didn't we wall that off? He shrugs. They dig, apparently. You make a mental note. Add mongoose roofing to tomorrow's supply list. The day doesn't get better. As you head toward the upper gallery, you find a cluster of bats hanging from the ceiling like tiny, grumpy fruit. You're not supposed to disturb them. One priest swears their presence is a sign of eternal balance, but their droppings are decidedly imbalanced, especially when they hit your shoulder. There's even a rumor that one corridor is avoided entirely because it houses a particularly opinionated owl. Workers claim she hoots in judgment whenever your duster technique is lacking. Midday heat starts to seep into the stone. You retreat into one of the side balconies that overlook the Nile. It's shaded, breezy, and best of all quiet. Until the bees show up. You hear the low drone before you see them. A casual buzz, then a swirling vortex of tiny golden bodies. You hold perfectly still as they hover near your polished section. One lands on your feather duster, another lands on your nose. You whisper, I am part of the pyramid. I am stone. I am boring. They seem convinced and drift away. You exhale, then you sneeze. It echoes all the way to the offering chamber, startling someone into dropping a jar of scented oil back inside. Your next assignment is to help clean the cavern of King's Breath, a chamber so deep that air barely stirs. It smells like incense, old wood, and something faintly much. You're told it's perfectly safe, though one scribe refuses to enter without a protective garland. Made of garlic and mint, you bring extra feathers. The corners of this room haven't been touched in weeks, partly because it requires climbing onto a ledge via a rope ladder that's about as stable as a priest's mood during drought season. As you settle in, you notice something wedged into a crevice, a bit of fur, a nest. You poke it gently with your duster. It hisses. You fall. Thankfully, you only drop a few feet before landing on a pile of surprisingly soft papyrus sacks. Your partner leans over and says, "Congratulations. You've discovered the temple cat nursery." That's right, somewhere deep within the pyramid, a group of cats has taken up residence. No one knows how they got there. No one really minds. They don't damage the stone. They control the rodents, and occasionally, They sit beside ceremonial incense burners like tiny lion statues. You climb out of the pile and give up on that alcove. As the day ends, you meet with the scent team for a debrief. They're trying to figure out how to deter the birds without upsetting the gods. The current theory: infuse the walls with basil and blue lotus. Birds hate basil, says one woman confidently. You're not convinced. Toth Jr. seems like the kind of guy who'd eat basil just to prove a point. You lie down that evening on your reed mat, eyelids heavy, and your ears still ringing from an ibis screech. You dream of bats doing synchronized dances and a mongoose leading a procession of cats down a limestone hallway. You didn't just clean today, you survived the wildlife barely. You're halfway through sweeping a lesser hallway, a place so forgotten. The dust feels like it's trying to reclaim ownership. When you stumble upon a curious inscription scratched beneath a faded cartouche, it's not part of the official carvings. The lines are hasty, the symbols crooked, as though someone did this quickly, maybe even while looking over their shoulder. You squint. It reads, "Neferet loves Potty, eternally, even if he only works in the lower tomb vents." Ah, the eternal tradition of ancient graffiti. Today, you're on hieroglyphic graffiti patrol, the most quietly scandalous department of the Feathering Guild. Your job is to find and gently remove unauthorized carvings and sketches from the stone walls of the pyramid's internal chambers. You also get to judge them, which makes this secretly the best shift of the week. Your duster is swapped for a reed brush, a scraping pick, and a kit of softening salves that smell vaguely of cinnamon and regret. You kneel before the carving, brush in hand. "Neferet," you whisper, "you deserve better than Potty. No offense to tomb vent guys, but eternally." With a soft stroke, you begin the process of erasing the hearts, the poorly drawn ankh symbols, and what looks like someone's attempt at a pharaoh mimra, with crossed eyes and a caption reading, "Sun's out, tongues outa." Mainstream historical fact: ancient Egyptians did, in fact, leave behind graffiti. While we mostly think of them as solemn and reverent, plenty of graffiti has been found in tombs and temples, some of it playful, some deeply personal, and some just strange. Historians still argue whether pyramid interiors were ever considered completely off limits for such expressions, or if the pyramid workers saw them more as canvases of pride, humor, or rebellion. You discover an entire section on the western stairwell, filled with what can only be described as pharaoh fan art. Ramses with extra muscles, Seti wearing a crown and sandals, a fashion no-no. One clever scribe even added a caption, "Bow before the Sandal King." You're torn. Do you erase it, or preserve this ancient meme? Hemni happens to pass by and sees you hesitate. He narrows his eyes. "Rule 1, he says. "If it's got abs, it goes. Right?" Fair. Some of the graffiti, though, is oddly touching. You uncover a small, faint symbol near the Hall of Sacrifice, a pair of crossed palms, and beneath it, the words "For my son, who shines brighter than Ra." Your hand lingers over the brush. You can't bring yourself to scrub it off. "Leave it," murmurs Nettie, who appears behind you carrying a bucket of moon oil. "Some things were meant to stay." You nod. Not everything has to be erased. Some things are part of the pyramid now. Your partner calls you over to a chamber rarely visited, the lower echo room, where everything sounds like it's happening underwater. There, in the most inconvenient spot possible, the underside of a ceiling arch. Someone has carved a long, winding message about how they once saw a camel ghost. You tilt your head. Camel ghost. Your partner nods seriously. That's not even the weirdest one. The next inscription you find simply reads, "If you are reading this, I am in the crawlspace. Send lentils." You don't ask questions. You just clean. The tools are delicate brushes made from reed fiber, cloth soaked in softened pumice solution, even a paste made from lemon pulp and goat milk to help fade shallow scratches. It's not unlike skincare, honestly. But for a very old, very moody pyramid, the only time you really worry is when you find a deep carving near the upper air shaft. It's written in neat hieroglyphs, like a message to someone important. I warned him not to move the lid. Now the bats won't stop singing. You blink. You read it again. Then you slowly step back and mark the spot pending priest review. Not your job. Mid-afternoon, the heat drives you back to the shaded vent corridors. These tight passageways are where the airflow channels are hidden and, unsurprisingly, where the most graffiti lives. No priest ever comes here, just apprentices. With idle hands and an etching knife. You find tally marks, secret calendars, doodles of crocodiles wearing sandals. One entire wall dedicated to the phrase, "raw rules," repeated over and over. Like someone's punishment exercise. There's one other spot, the graffiti. Patrol always checks. The sacral alcove of final peace. Sounds fancy, but it's basically an awkward triangle of wall, where scent workers stash broken jars and board. Guards sometimes nap. It's also home to a mysterious drawing known simply as the Dancing Jackal. No one knows who carved it. It's badly done, like offensively so, but it has a certain charm. The jackal has big eyes, long limbs, and what appears to be a tambourine. Scholars are baffled. You add a hat to the jackal when no one's looking. Just a little one. Your final task for the day is to inscribe over the cleaned surfaces with a sealant made from frankincense resin and powdered onyx. This ensures no new graffiti appears, at least, not easy. You press your hand to the finished wall, feel the warmth of the stone beneath your fingers, and sigh. It's strange. This job, you erase names so they're forgotten, but you remember them anyway. You carry their stories, Nefret and her hopeless crush, the Sandal King, the ghost camel guy. They may be gone, but in your mind, they're part of the pyramid now. A few get recorded in the secret graffiti scrawlin', unofficial logbook maintained by guild members over the years. Hemni won't admit it exists, but you've seen it tucked behind the sacred broom rack. Before you clock out, you add your own tiny line near the edge of a pillar. Feather duster number 11 was here. Shine on. It probably won't last, but maybe, just maybe, someone will find it centuries from now and smile. The morning sun glints off the stone. As you climb toward the pyramid's western incline, heart full of dread and sandals full of sand. Today, you're on scent duty, again. It's the most underrated and oversmelled assignment of them all. And Hemni always says it separates the casual cleaners from the truly aromatic elite. You wouldn't mind the task so much if it didn't involve hauling a basket full of fragile alabaster jars, each brimming with oils potent enough to render a priest unconscious at 10 paces. You've seen it happen. Your kit includes blue lotus essence, myrrh, resin beads, papyrus oil, 1 jar, mysteriously labeled, trial batch 23, do not sniff directly. You try not to think about that one. Your mission is simple. Apply the correct scents to the designated chambers. Align them with the daily solar and lunar harmonics as determined by an overly enthusiastic astrology scribe, and avoid getting high off the fumes. Simple. In theory, the pyramid's interior corridors are mapped for scent zones. The northern wing gets lotus and cedar. The eastern vestibule demands frankincense. And the western slow-pure domain today prefers a delicate layering of sweet basil and something called sacred cinnamon fog. You open the first jar and the smell hits you like a wagon of spicy bricks. You cough. A nearby linen worker glances over. Trial bat 23. You nod. Tears in your eyes. They wince in solidarity. A mainstream historical fact. Ancient Egyptians used scent not just for pleasure, but as part of religious ritual. Incense was burned daily in temples. Scented oils were applied to statues. And walls, and even the dead, were perfumed before burial. Scent was divine. It wasn't just about smell, it was about presence. To be fragrant was to be closer to the gods, and yet, you can't help but notice that closer to the gods smells an awful lot like cinnamon-soaked onions. Today, as you enter the chamber of shifting light, a small alcove that catches sunset perfectly for about 6 minutes each day. You see the scent residue from yesterday's team, sticky, crusted, sloppy work. You mutter under your breath and pull out your polished copper scraper. This is where things get delicate. You must first remove yesterday's oils without scratching the sacred limestone beneath. If you go too deep, you risk offending both the priests and the spirits of whoever's entombed in the next hallway. It's also not great for your inspection record. You rub gently in small circular motions, always clockwise. Unless it's a fasting day. Then blot with linen dipped in lotus water. As the surface clears, you prepare to reapply the new scent blend, this time with a small reed fan, which lets the oil waft naturally into the air, like a prayer that smells vaguely like soup. You've just started your fan strokes when you hear a soft theft behind you. You freeze, another theft. You turn. It's the scent apprentice from yesterday. He's holding a half-closed jar and looking sheepish. Didn't mean to spill the thyme musk, he says. You glance behind him. The wall is now stained a suspicious greenish brown. Oh no, you whisper. Oh yes, he whispers back. You spend the next half hour furiously buffing the thyme musk disaster with a mixture of sand paste and linen strips. The smell is ... not improving. It now has the distinct scent of haunted stew. You debate praying. Hemni appears halfway through and just nods silently. New record, he says, walking away. For scent violations before noon, scent duty is more than just oil application. You're also expected to gently refresh the air. This means waving large palm fronds, wafting incense bundles, and occasionally directing airflow, with a bronze plate that looks like a flattened turtle. The real challenge comes in the echo galleria, room with no ventilation and an echo so perfect that every scent somehow loops back to you. You step in cautiously. You've prepped for this. You place 3 lotus incense sticks in triangular formation. You light the central myrrh candle. You chant the approved wafting incantation. And then the room smells like bliss. For about 5 seconds. Then the scent loops. it comes back around the chamber, stronger, denser. And now mixed with your sweat, you drop the turtle plate and bolt for the exit. Once outside, you collapse near the well of papyrus water and douse your face. A linen worker offers you a pinch of powdered mint. You inhale it gratefully. Your final stop is the corridor of the dead king's shoes. No one knows why it's called that. There are no shoes, but it's tradition to perfume it with cedar oil and chant "Walk the Eternal Walk" 3 times while fanning the floor tiles. You do the chant, you do the fanning, and then you trip your cedar. Jar goes flying, it arcs in slow motion. It lands, unbroken, directly into a patch of bat guano. You consider crawling into a burial niche and becoming part of the pyramid yourself. Instead, you scoop up the jar, wipe it clean, and sigh the sigh of someone who knows they're going to be scrubbing the king's socks corridor tomorrow as punishment. As the sun lowers and the walls glow golden, you wipe your hands with a cloth soaked in rosewater and lemon. Your skin feels sticky. Your hair smells like a botanical explosion. Your feather duster has absorbed more scents than a perfume market. And yet, the pyramid smells beautiful. It's floral and woody and sweet and ancient all at once. It feels holy. You lean against the warm stone and smile. Tomorrow will be more oil, more mishaps, more wafting, but tonight, you're the one who made it smell like the gods were home. You wake to drums, not the thunderous, ceremonial kind that mark a new king's ascension. No, this is the unmistakable, heart-sinking rhythm of the inspection march. The high priest himself is coming, not Hemni, not Jet. The high priest, the feathered authority, the sifter of sand, the one who actually gets to talk to the pharaoh. That guy. You roll off your mat and immediately trip over your scent kit from yesterday. Blue lotus oil spills onto your toes. You're going to smell sacred all day, whether you like it or not. There's a flurry of movement in the courtyard. Apprentices rush around like startled geese. Feather dusters are being refluffed, tunics scrubbed, shine kits polished until the copper bowls gleam. Someone's trying to chase a cat off the sacred broom rack. But the cat is winning. You're assigned to Formation Line B, which is where they stick apprentices with slightly above average polishing reports, but at least one minor mongoose incident on their record. You fall into line with your duster, freshly lemon-oiled, and your back ramrod straight. A trumpet blares. The high priest enters. He's dressed in layered linen robes that shimmer faintly like mirage water. His headdress rises like a feathered obelisk, and his sandals have little gold wings stitched onto the sides. He doesn't walk, he glides. You're not convinced there aren't rollers hidden under there. He stops at the edge of the courtyard and holds up one hand. Silence falls then. Without warning, he gestures toward the pyramid and declares, "Today, we inspect the spirit alignments." A communal groan swallowed quickly. Spirit alignments are the bane of pyramid maintenance. Not because they're mystical. Because they're vague, a mainstream historical fact. Ancient Egyptians did align their pyramids very precisely with celestial bodies. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned almost perfectly with true north. Scholars believe this alignment was deeply significant, possibly related to Orion's belt or the sun's journey. Historians still argue whether these alignments were practical, spiritual, or just impressive astronomy. To you, it means spending the day verifying if corridors feel right, which is as easy as herding bees in a sandstorm. You are assigned to the Eastern Whisper Hall, a narrow corridor supposedly calibrated to catch the first echo of Ra's morning light. You're given a copper pendulum, a tiny incense cone, and instructions to walk slowly and feel the vibes. You stare at the tools. Feel the what? The instructor shrugs. You'll know you light the incense. The air turns sweet and thick, like burnt honey. You walk the corridor slowly, pendulum swinging, trying not to step on any priestly footprints. Every few steps, you whisper a line from the alignment creed. May the beam strike true. May the air be still. May the feather float untroubled. Your pendulum wobbles. A breeze stirs from nowhere. Unacceptable, mutters the junior priest behind you. You try again, this time with tighter posture and slightly more spiritual squinting. The pendulum holds. Steady, you make it halfway through the hall when the real test arrives, a spirit jar. These small alabaster vessels are set at various pressure points in the pyramid, each one intended to detect imbalance in sacred resonance. You don't know how they work. No one does. There's a legend that if a spirit jar cracks, it means a disturbance in the pyramid's soul. You approach it cautiously. The jar is intact. You blow a gentle puff of air toward it. As per protocol, it whistles. You freeze. That's not supposed to happen, whispers your assistant. I noticed, you reply. You report the anomaly, which sets off an immediate flurry of robes and incantations. Within minutes, 3 scent purifiers arrive. One begins fanning the jar. One begins chanting. The third sprinkles powdered rose petals around the base. I think it's a false echo, someone suggests. Too much thyme oil yesterday. The high priest glides in, lifts the jar, shakes it one sand, then smiles. A little off, he says, but forgivable. It smells of devotion. You don't know whether to feel praised or mildly roasted. The rest of the day is a blur of corridors and vibrations. You help inspect the corridor of eternal softness, very drafty today. The chamber of echoing gratitude, someone's laughter won't stop bouncing. And the lesser passage of celestial elbows, no one knows why it's called that. One corridor feels too aligned, which triggers suspicion. Another is marked mildly misaligned, but charming. It's all wildly subjective, but everyone pretends it's not. In the afternoon, you're called to assist with the sun shaft alignment check, a long-standing ritual involving mirrors, chalk lines, and several sweaty people holding polished copper sheets. The goal is to bounce a sunbeam down a tunnel so that it hits the sacred cat statue right on the nose. You manage to reflect the beam through the first angle, but then someone sneezes. The light veers, it hits a pot of ceremonial oil, which ignites, which drips, which sets off the emergency. Incense protocol. You spend the next hour fanning smoke away from a fresco of a bird-headed god, who looks increasingly disappointed by sunset. The high priest finishes his inspection, nodding faintly. He raises his hands. The spirit aligns. The feathers shimmer. The pyramid ... breathes. He turns, he glides away, silence. Then cheers erupt from every apprentice. Handler waft, specialist, and duster present. You lean against a pillar and let your breath out slowly. Your arms ache, your eyes sting. Your sandals smell like mystery, spice. But the pyramid passed. You passed. That night, Hemni pats you on the shoulder and says, "Next time, don't light the jar." You start to explain, then stop. He smiles. Good instinct. You lie on your mat and stare up at the stars. For a moment, everything is quiet. Still, maybe. Aligned, the pyramid has moods. You've learned this the hard way. Some days it's serene and sunlit, its stones glowing with warmth like an old friend's embrace. Other days, like today, it feels grumpy, heavy, and echoing with the kind of silence that sounds judgmental. You're assigned to a duty, which sounds easy until you realize what that actually means. Every hallway, antechamber, offering space, and whisper corridor must have its floor swept, shined, and inviting two sandals. That's the official phrase. Hymne says it like it's sacred law, armed with your broom, your linen cloth, and your bucket of mildly lemoned water. You begin in the outer vesting chamber, where priests prepare their robes. The stone here is smooth, interrupted only by embedded fossil shells and the occasional smudge of incense ash dot. You start in measured strokes left to right, like waves on the Nile. It's hypnotic work. Sweep, sweep, wipe. The pyramid exhales. Dust that's probably older than anyone you've ever met. Maybe it's pharaoh dust. Maybe it's just donkey dander. You choose not to think too hard. As you bend low, you spot a curious shimmer, a bit of mica embedded between floor slabs. You rub it lightly, and it catches the light like a buried gem. You smile. This place hides beauty, even in its feet. A mainstream historical fact. Many pyramid floors were built with incredible precision, often laid with limestone or alabaster. Some tombs feature inlays of colored stone or even rare crystal fragments. While the grand exteriors get all the attention, archaeologists have found that great care was taken with flooring, too, especially in the inner sanctums. Historians still argue whether this was purely aesthetic or if the patterns held symbolic meaning for the soul's journey. You clean one chamber whose floor is inlaid with long triangular tiles that, when you squint, resemble a reed boat, perhaps meant to ferry a king's spirit through the underworld. You whisper a quiet bon voyage and scrub on. In another room, there's a permanent stain in the shape of a dog. You've tried to clean it before it doesn't budge. Some say it's from the high priest's hound, who once got loose and refused to leave until bribed with figs. Others say it's a spirit marking and should never be touched. So you work around it, sweeping respectfully like it's an honored guest. Eventually, you reach the southern quiet hall, which is famous for exactly two things: its pristine tilework and the fact that absolutely no one talks while cleaning it. You're not entirely sure why. No one is. It's just always been silent. There's a carved image of a jackal there, with its paw raised. Some say if you speak in that hallway, the jackal remembers your name and whispers it into the wind forever. No one wants that, so silently you sweep, and silently you discover something unusual. A circular scuff mark in the middle of a square-tiled floor. You crouch. You study it. It's faint, but definite. Something round and heavy was rolled here. You glance around. No statues, no jars, no brooms big enough to leave that trace. You whisper, "Weird." The wind picks up slightly. You pretend it didn't. Later, during your shift in the grand gallery, the central inclined passager, tasked with drag smoothing, which is exactly as dramatic as it sounds. You tie a thick, heavy linen cloth to your belt, soak it in lemon water and polished sand, and slide yourself backward up the slope, letting the drag cloth buff the floor beneath you. It's exhausting. You feel like a slightly embarrassed snail. A group of scent apprentices pass and giggle. Looking good, granite glider. One says, You wave with the dignity of someone too winded to respond. Part of your job also includes inspecting floor seams for damage. These are the tiny cracks between tiles or blocks where sand and time slip in like uninvited guests. You kneel, press your fingers into the seams, feel for movement. One tile clicks. You pause, you press again, click, you look around, then lift the corner carefully with your scraper. Beneath it is not sand, but a small cloth pouch. You frown. Inside the pouch is a folded bit of papyrus and 3 dried rose petals. The writing on the note is smudged but legible. Wait for me at the western step, at moonrise. You don't know what's stranger, that someone hid a love note beneath a floor tile, or that it's clearly been there for decades, maybe centuries. You tuck it back, gently reseal the tile, and press your hand over the spot. The pyramid remembers everything. The final floor of the day is the false chamber, a decoy room designed to confuse grave robbers. No treasures, no bodies, just empty walls, a sealed door that leads nowhere, and a floor so clean it shines like a mirror. Your job is to keep it that way. There's something eerie about cleaning a room built on purpose to lie. Even the light feels crooked. As you polish, you see your reflection in the floor, smudged and shifting, like you're only partly there. You wave. Your reflection waves back. You mutter, I'm not paid enough for this, and it echoes 3 times. By the time the sun begins to drop, your knees are sore, your arms limp, and your shoulders streaked with limestone dust. But the floors, they shimmer. You walk back through the pyramid corridors barefoot, just to feel the cool stone underfoot. Every chamber you cleaned feels like a small blessing. Each step whispers history. You reach the entrance and bow slightly to the sandstone lintel because it just feels right. Tomorrow, you'll be cleaning niches, or torches, or maybe even statues, toes. But today, the pyramid shined from the ground up. The day begins before the sun is even up, which should be illegal, frankly. Your sandals haven't dried from yesterday, your knees ache from too much floor gliding, and someone used your feather duster to beat a rug again. You know it was Senyu. He's got that guilty look and a faint layer of rug dust on his tunic. Still, you've got a new assignment today. Torch maintenance, not glamorous, not scented, but essential. Inside the pyramid, daylight only reaches the very outermost corridors. Everything deeper, everything important relies on torchlight. Rows of flickering flames in clay sconces, tall bronze stands, and even elaborate ceremonial fire bowls that require a special kind of resin to burn cleanly without choking everyone with smoke. If the torches go out, the pyramid goes dark, and no one wants that. Not even the bats. Your job today is to check every flame, clean the soot, replace burnt-out wicks, and refill the oil without igniting your own hair in the process. You strap on your soot sash, which is just a dark cloth to keep from staining your tunic, and head for the upper spiral chamber, where torches line the walls in staggered, spiraling patterns. Each one must burn with the same brightness, same scent, and same sacred intensity. Torch 1, too dim. Torch 2, fine. Torch 3, leaning like it's had a rough day. Torch 4, full-on riot mode. Crackling, sputtering, and throwing sparks like it's auditioning for a festival. You sigh and begin the calming ritual. Remove the torch. Trim the wick with bronze shears. Refill the bowl with cedar oil. Relight from the central flame. Whisper. The flame prayer. Rise, light, return. Burn true, burn soft, burn wise. A mainstream historical fact. Egyptians did use torches and oil lamps to light inner chambers. But there's long been debate about how they avoided smoke damage in the deep interiors. Historians still argue whether they used polished mirrors to reflect sunlight, or if ventilation systems, hidden shafts, angled corridors helped remove the smoke. Some fringe theories even suggest mysterious electric lamps, but that's more bedtime story than scholarship. Torch 5 is a mess. The sconce is cracked, the wall behind it scorched, and there's a bit of soot graffiti that says "Too hot for Sekhmet." You snort. Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of war, would probably take that as a compliment. You spend a good half-hour scrubbing the scorch mark with a mixture of lemon water, powdered pumice, and elbow grease. The soot clings like guilt. Your arm burns. But the wall lightens, slowly, revealing a delicate carving underneath, to falcons touching beaks. You pause. It's beautiful. And you would have missed it, if not for the scorch. Next, you descend to the burial hallway, not as ominous as it sounds. No bodies anymore. Just a series of torches that flank the pathway to what used to be the burial chamber, now sealed and off-limits. Still, the fire has to be maintained. The flame is considered part of the soul's journey. It flickers, so might the spirit. As you check each torch, you notice one has been replaced. Not standard pyramid issue. This one's shaft is painted red, and the oil bowl is engraved with little stars. You touch it gently. It's warm to warm. The wick flares. You leap back, as a puff of smoke hits your face and makes your eyes water. When it clears, you realize something. This isn't cedar oil. It's spiced date resin. You groan. Scent workers again. Always experimenting. You replace it with proper cedar oil, and pray no spirits were offended by that fruity explosion. Later, in the false pathways wing a maze of unused corridors once designed to confuse tomb raiders, you find a full section of unlit sconces. Just ... cold. Abandoned. A faint smell of mold clings to the walls. You light each one slowly, methodically. As the flames catch, shadows retreat. Symbols appear on the walls you hadn't seen before. Cartouches, small animals, and a line of dancers. You pause at one, a frog in a feathered headdress. You don't even question it anymore. You clean the soot with a soft cloth, careful not to disturb the ancient lines. That's the thing about this job. It's not just about lighting the path. It's about revealing what the pyramid chooses to hide in the dark dot, and sometimes hiding what should stay hidden. You reach a torch that refuses to light. You try new wicks, new oil, even whispering compliments. Nothing. Hemni appears behind you, arms crossed. That one never lights, he says. Legend says it burned once, during a storm, then went out and hasn't lit since. You look at him. Why don't we just remove it? He shrugs. Too scared. You leave it. Some things are better left mysterious. The final chamber of the day is the breath room, where the largest ceremonial torch lives twice your height. Encased in a bronze serpent, burning a sacred mix of cedar, frankincense, and powdered blue lotus. The air in here is thick, warm, and oddly calming. You clean the basin with cloths soaked in milk and honey water. The smell is divine. Your hands are sticky, but it feels right. You kneel to relight the main wick, whispering, "To light is to honor. To burn is to serve. To serve is to remember." The flame catches, it dances, it stays. You sit beside it for a while, letting the warmth seep into your bones. Outside the world is hot, loud, and full of beetles. But in here, the pyramid breathes. Softly the torches are lit, the shadows held at bay. You did your part, and your eyebrows are still intact. Barely. It begins with a drip. Not metaphorically, an actual, literal drip. Followed by another. Then a small splash. You blink awake on your mat in the resting chamber. Look up, and see a dark patch forming on the ceiling. It glistens slightly in the flickering torchlight. You squint harder. It's moisture. This is not ideal. The pyramid, for all its grandeur, was never meant to be wet. Stone and water do not get along. When water appears where it shouldn't, you don't just fix it to call the Moisture Response Guild, and lucky you. You're shadowing them today. You join a small team of heavily satcheled workers armed with copper siphons, charcoal seals, beeswax ropes, and an alarming number of rolled-up reeds. Your team leader is a woman named Mehet, who walks like a hawk and speaks like she knows something no one else does, which frankly, she probably does. She leads you to the source of the leak, a small ceiling seam near the sun passage, where the outer temperature meets the cool inner stone. A fine mist now curls from the crack. Mehet holds up a shard of onyx and watches as it clouds over. Condensation, she mutters. Too much oil. Too little prayer. Possibly a curse. Let's investigate. You suppress a sigh as you climb the ladder to reach the seam. The mist thickens slightly. It smells faintly of basil and gote, sign that someone nearby may have spilled sacred stew again. You'll file that away for later. Mehet hands you a tool called a whisper fork, a long, narrow rod used to test wall soundness by tapping lightly and listening for changes in pitch. You tap. The stone sounds hollow. Not a good sign. A mainstream historical fact. While Egyptian pyramids were built to last, they weren't always watertight. Seasonal humidity, rare desert rains, and even ceremonial flooding from temple basins nearby could sometimes seep in. Historians still argue whether water was ever intentionally used in pyramids, perhaps as part of rituals involving the Nile's sacred life-giving power. Right now, though, this feels less like sacred symbolism and more like a soggy problem. You press beeswax along the seam, smoothing it carefully. Mehet murmurs a sealing charm as you work, not because she believes it'll help, but because the walls like attention. A few hours later, the dripping stops. But then, like all good pyramid stories, things escalate. Another apprentice runs up, panting. There's a wet patch in the whispering niche. Mehet's eyes narrow. Not the niche. That's sacred acoustics. The whispering niche is a tiny alcove near the great echo chamber, designed to carry sound perfectly from one end to the other. If there's water in there, the entire harmonic frequency of the east wing could become ... soggy. You hurry over, and sure enough, there's a puddle forming in the stone hollow. You lean in, listening. It gurgles. It actually gurgles. Mehet gently pokes the wall. Water seeps out in a perfect line. Somebody's oversteamed their scent bowl, she mutters. You carefully apply reed siphons to draw the water out, gently stuffing dry papyrus to absorb the excess. It takes time, patience, and a sincere lack of claustrophobia. At one point, your hand is so far inside a vent you can feel the back of another wall, which is not supposed to be there. Hot, you whisper. She comes over, peers into the crack, and nods. That's a false wall. Hidden moisture pocket. There. Rare. She passes you a small scraper. Careful now. Gently. You scrape a thin layer of plaster, and behind it, a narrow stone shaft appears, one lined with ancient brick and faintly blackened at the top. You and Mahat exchange looks. This was sealed intentionally, she says softly. Probably to keep the moisture in. You both agree not to open it fully. Some things were sealed for a reason. You patch the spot, reinforce it with resin wrap, and make a note. Do not prod again unless Pyramid begins crying. Back outside, the sun has risen high. The pyramid walls are warm, now almost too warm. This creates a unique problem. Thermal sweating. You never thought stone could sweat, but here it is, fogging up like a nervous servant. You assist in rubbing down the corridor walls with linen soaked in rose ash and clay powder. This draws out the moisture without damaging the limestone. It's delicate work. One wrong rub, and you might erase a 1,000-year-old glyph for peaceful fishing. Later in the day, you're called to the Serpent Stairs, where an unusual moisture stain has formed in the shape of a well. You can't unsee. It's clearly a cat. Everyone's gathered around debating what it means. It's says one priest excitedly. A sign. It's just humidity, says Mahat, poking it. Lookers are already drooping. Still, someone hangs a garland on it, just in case. By the time evening rolls around, the moisture has been sealed. The whisper niche restored, and the suspicious serpent staircat stain has been declared probably not ominous. You wipe your hands clean on your sash and feel the pyramid settle, slightly less cranky, more cooperative. You return to your mat, exhausted but oddly satisfied. You've patched leaks older than your grandfather. You've extracted puddles from sacred geometry. You've seen walls cry and kept them calm. The pyramid breathes easier now, and somewhere deep within its stony heart, you swear you hear a whisper. Thanks. Probably your imagination. Probably you don't notice it at first. Just a missing vase. A cushion out of place. Then a whole flute jar is upside down in the offering niche. You'd never have spotted it. Except for the single olive pit someone forgot to sweep. An olive piton, a pyramid that hasn't seen olives since the last feast of Ra's toenails. This can mean only one thing. Night intruders, no. Not grave robbers, not spirits. Worse, monkeys, I confirms it grimly. Storage. Room 6 was ransacked. Cinnamon gone. One sandal taken. They left a note. He shows you the note. It's just a banana peel, but still. Pyramid monkey raids aren't common, but they're not unheard of. Local tribes of macaques live near the Nile groves, and every so often one particularly bold troop discovers the ventilation shafts. What begins as a little curious climbing becomes a full-scale citrus theft. Operation within days. You are put on monkey-proofing patrol. Your task, inspect every known shaft, crack, hole, and offering alcove for signs of infiltration. Your toolkit: a broom, a noisemaker, a hollow gourd full of pebbles, and a small pouch of dried figs for bribes. First stop, the upper incense corridor, where the shaft was once used to funnel sacred smoke during midsummer rites. You wedge yourself halfway in, and listen, scratch, shuffle, chitter. You retreat. Yep, they're here. A mainstream historical fact: ancient Egyptians kept monkeys as pets, companions, and occasionally as sacred animals. Baboons were linked to Thoth, the god of wisdom, and sometimes depicted in temple relief. But wild monkeys, especially the cheeky, chaos-loving kind, were rarely welcome inside sacred spaces. Historians still argue whether the animals were revered, tolerated, or just begrudgingly respected for their persistence. You set a trap, not a real trap, a polite obstacle. You hang strips of shiny copper foil. Monkeys hate shiny movement. Sprinkle bitter herbs, and plug the shaft with a carved stone featuring a stern baboon face. Symbolic disapproval works better than violence. You move to the lotus niche, where the offering jars have clearly been tampered with. You find a sticky paw print and horrifyingly a half-eaten, ceremonial fig placed inside the sacred scroll basin. This is war, you whisper. You assign your partner to guard duty and move to the next task: evidence cleanup. Monkeys are messy. They leave trails of fruit peels, small pebbles, and occasionally teeth marks on sacred objects. You gently polish the tooth-scored alabaster bowl and mutter, "This is why we can't have nice things." As you wipe down the monkey corridor, its unofficial name now, you notice something new: a pile of arranged sticks, a circle, a pattern. Not monkey randomness. This is intentional. You stare. Are they trying to copy our floor patterns? Emni appears behind you, chewing a date. He shrugs. Maybe they want to join the guild. You don't laugh. Later, a priest reports missing amulets from the Eye of Ra room. You hurry over and find nothing, except a small pile of glittering copper shavings and one perfectly clean feather. The monkeys are evolving. The team escalates. You're handed the saffron whistle, an object of great ceremony, traditionally used only when the integrity of the pyramid is threatened by unsanctioned chaos. It emits a sound that no monkey can ignore, a high-pitched mix between a hawk's scream and a god's sneeze. You blow it to silence. Then, from the upper rafters, you hear chaos: scrambling, screeching, a cascade of dried mango slices. You ready your broom. Out from the shadows swings a single, gold-banded macaque, clutching an ornamental fish statue. It locks eyes with you. It knows the chase begins, through corridors, around echo halls, past stunned scent workers. You pursue, broom in hand, as it swings from torch sconces, does a flip off a pillar, and ducks into the false pharaoh niche. You follow. Inside, the monkey is gone, but the fish statue sits on the floor, unharmed, and next to it, a single blue flower, fresh. You blink, you leave the flower. You take the statue. A small act of understanding is better than a full-on primate feud. The rest of the afternoon is spent installing protective grates over lesser shafts, gently removing fig fragments from ceremonial robes, and issuing a formal "Please stay out" prayer to the monkey ancestors. At sunset, the pyramid is calm, the jars are sealed, the cushions fluffed, the torches lit, the vents quiet. But somewhere, high in the beams of the antechamber of breath, you spot a tail, just watching, respectfully for now. You sit with Hymni by the pyramid's edge, sipping cool barley water. Be back, he says. You nod. We'll be ready, you reply. He chuckles. Maybe train them, get them dusting. You both laugh, but somewhere inside, you're wondering the pyramid has guests, not royalty, not scribes, not even bored nobles looking to commission a statue of themselves standing heroically next to a goose. No. This time it's a delegation from the northern gnomes, sent to inspect cultural maintenance standards. Whatever that means. You're assigned as a presentation assistant, which sounds fancy until you realize it means 3 things. Dusting everything twice, standing perfectly still while a man in leopard print linen asks you about ceiling angles, smiling. Like your sandals aren't full of gravel. The guests arrive at sunrise, carried on litters lined with ostrich feather fans. One has a traveling cushion embroidered with his own face. Another keeps calling the pyramid a bit sandy. You immediately sense this will be a long day. First stop, the Hall of Founding Stones, where you've already spent 3 hours buffing each limestone block with rose pepperous balm. It smells heavenly. You, less so. You trail behind as the head of the delegation, a tall man with suspiciously shiny eyebrows, runs a single judgmental finger along the base of a pillar. Light dust, he says. You whisper, that's sacred sediment, but no one hears you. Hymni gives you a sympathetic glance. They'll be gone by sunset. Just breathe. You nod. Then forget to breathe for 2 entire chambers. The delegation pauses next in the celestial corridor, where the ceiling is painted with stars 5-pointed, gold-tipped, and arranged in a pattern said to mimic the summer sky over the valley of the kings. You had to clean each one with a goose feather brush tied to a very long stick, which you now carry like a royal scepter made of exhaustion. A mainstream historical fact. Star maps inside Egyptian tombs and pyramids were often designed to guide the soul after death. Some ceilings were painted to represent Nut, the sky goddess, arching over the earth. Others reflected precise astronomical knowledge. Historians still argue whether these maps were ceremonial, scientific, or some mystic blend of both. The guests nod approvingly until one asks, "Is that star ... crooked?" You lean over. It's not crooked. It's a beetle. You gently escort it outside. Next, the delegation visits the weighing chamber replica, where a ceremonial scale balances a feather against a small stone heart, a symbolic nod to the judgment of the soul. Your job. Keep the feather fluffed. You fluffed that feather for 45 minutes. This morning they walk past it in silence. One sneezes. Feather flies. You retrieve it with silent dignity. Lunch arrives, platters of lentil cakes, honeyed barley, and boiled onions. Shaped like anks. You're not invited to eat, but you do get to carry the plates. Your arms smell like sacred garlic for hours. During a lull, one guest wanders toward the sealed reflection chamber, which is clearly roped off. You intercept him gently. He asks, "But what's in there?" You answer honestly. Mostly mirrors. Some regrets. He nods slowly and walks away. Mid-afternoon, the tour continues through the tomb of unused rituals, a chamber filled with ceremonial items that were apparently designed but never employed. You've spent all morning dusting these mysterious objects, including a triple-handled jar labeled "I Only," A sun hat made entirely of palm fronds and feathers, a staff with a fork on one end, and a fish on the other. The guests are fascinated. One leans in and whispers, "This is the real magic, you know." You decide not to mention that half of the items are probably temple storage overflow. Then comes the surprise. One delegate wants to test the cleaning protocols. They choose the sandal room, where ceremonial footwear is stored for major processions. You and Hemni exchange a look. That room is ... temperamental. The sandals are picky. They creak at night. Still, you unlock the door. Inside, rows of intricately woven papyrus sandals, each mounted on its own little pedestal. Some have gold threads. Others have names etched on the soles: Horus Stepper, Anubis Glide, and one pair simply labeled Fast. The guest picks one at random and says, "Let's see the cleaning method." You nod, kneel, and demonstrate the three-step process. Dry brush with crushed flax bristles. Wipe with diluted lotus oil and linen. Whisper the walking chant. Step true, step light, step eternal. The guest tries it. He drops the sandal. It lands upright. The whole room goes silent. You retrieve it, brush the heel, and return it to its pedestal. "Impressive," he mutters. By late afternoon, the guests are getting sleepy. You escort them to the wind room, a narrow chamber where air moves constantly. No one knows how. Some say it's a sacred breath. Others say it's just geometry. They recline on polished benches and let the wind pass over them, murmuring about architecture and pomegranate juice. You stand at attention, trying not to sway. Then comes the final test, the echo blessing chamber, where sound is used instead of incense. A priest enters, chants 3 lines, and the echoes carry the blessing throughout the hall. You've already swept the floor twice, fluffed the sound pillows, and cleared the corners of mysterious fuzz. The echo is perfect. The guests smile. You did it. They depart at sunset, back onto their litters, into the desert. Hemni exhales loudly. "Well," he says, "they didn't hate it." You lean against a pillar and slide down to the floor. You're covered in lint, sandal oil, and the faint aura of one too many silent glares. But the pyramid shined. Even the feather gleamed, and somewhere deep inside, you swear one of the sandals winked at you. Probably just the light. Probably the pyramid wakes before you do. It hums faintly as the sun crests the horizon, golden light stretching long and low across the desert. You sit up on your mat and feel it in your bones, that subtle vibration in the air, like the entire structure is inhaling. It's reset day. Once every 30 days, the pyramid is symbolically cleansed of spiritual buildup, soot accumulation, minor curses, and particularly persistent goose footprints. It's a ceremonial deep clean. Everyone participates. Every apprentice, priest, and duster handler. Even the night owl scent mixers. Hemni passes you a cup of barley drink and grins. "Today we scrub history." You groan softly. "What part do I get?" "Inner lintels," he says, far too cheerfully. You sigh and fetch your lintel kit, which includes a feather duster reinforced with goat hair bristles, a curved scraper for sandstone seams, a small vial of blessing glaze essentially, fancy lemon water, and a ladder that wobbles just enough to test your faith in gravity. You begin at the chamber of judicious planning, where lintels were once painted with small scenes of scribes whispering over scrolls. Most of the paint is gone, but the figures still linger in the stone. One is eternally pointing at the other's papyrus with clear passive aggression. A mainstream historical fact. Egyptian architecture often used decorative lintels over doorways to mark transitions from one sacred space to another. Many were inscribed with spells of protection, names of deities, or small scenes meant to ease passage. Historians still argue whether these carvings were intended for the living, the dead, or the gods themselves. You clean carefully, stroke by stroke, lifting dust that feels older than memory. The lintel above the strategic relaxation niche is particularly tricky. It's shaped like a sun disk, and every groove seems to hold exactly 1 grain of stubborn sand as you work. You hear the echoing sound of the reset ceremony beginning. In the central pulse chamber, bells ring, chants drift through the stone like smoke. Somewhere, a priest yells, "Not that bell," followed by a clang and a sheepish apology. Reset day is also the only time when the hidden inscriptions are revealed. Special powder is sprinkled across key lintels, revealing faint writings only, visible under morning light and exact humidity. You're invited to witness one in the Southwest Echo Hall, there. As the dust settles, a new line appears. Whoever dusts with care shall be remembered. You grin. Later, you're assigned to assist in the weight-balancing chamber, where ancient counterweights are checked for alignment. You don't know how they work, only that they hum when they're happy and clunk when they're not. Yours clunks, Hemni. Hands you a chisel. "Polish the soul edge," he says. It's always the soul edge. You don't know what that means, but you do it anyway. By midday, you help with the torch reweaving, where old wicks are retired and new ones are twisted by hand from flax soaked in sacred oil. It's a quiet process, meditative. Even the monkeys, yes, they returned briefly this morning and were gently asked to leave via soft percussion and mango bribes seem subdued. You twist wick after wick, your fingers slippery but sure. A nearby priest hums an old song about light never dying. You hum along. Then comes the final sweep, the last act of reset day. Every participant takes one pass through the grand gallery, feather duster or broom in hand, walking in slow formation. You fall into step, your duster ready. As you move, you feel the breeze from the breath shafts. You smell the incense of blue lotus and cinnamon. The light from the upper shaft casts golden rectangles on the walls. You pass the place where you chased the monkey. You pass the corridor where the jar whistled. You pass the whispering niche, now dry and still. And finally, you pass the sandstone lintel you cleaned just that morning. It looks back at you, or maybe you imagine it. The sweep ends. Everyone bows once to the central altar, then disperses. You linger. Place your duster gently on the floor. Whisper, "Thank you for letting us tend you." No one hears it, except maybe the stone. That evening you sit with Hemni and watch the stars blink alive. The pyramid glows in the moonlight, not literally, not magically, but in that way ancient things do when they've been tended with care. Hemni nudges you. Next week's tasks just posted. Guess who's on duster repair? You smile. Please tell me it's the monkey. He laughs. No, but you're close. You lean back, hands behind your head. and let the pyramid hum around you. One more day, one more layer of dust cleared, one more secret revealed. You don't know why you ended up here, but you're glad you did. The pyramid's work is never done, but somehow it feels worth it. Word count, 1091. Wind down, 300 words. The stars wheel silently above the horizon now, spinning ever so slowly, like forgotten jewels set into deep blue velvet. The desert cools, and your pyramid rests beneath the soft hush of night. Its stones cooling, its breath slowing. You lie back on your mat, arms folded behind your head, eyes half-lidded as you listen to the tiniest sounds, the faint scrape of a broom in the far corridor, the distant chime of a final torchwick catching flame, the hush of linen robes brushing against ancient walls. The pyramid is clean, not perfect, not untouched, but clean, honored, heard. There's something comforting in that, the idea that a structure so massive, so mysterious, still needs care, that even the mightiest of monuments can benefit from a feather duster, a whispered chant, and the soft hum of human hands tending stone. You breathe deeply. The air is warm with the last trace of cedar. Your muscles ache, but it's the good kind of tired. The kind that says you showed up, that you helped, that maybe, just maybe, your tiny brushstrokes have echoed through chambers older than you can comprehend. The pyramid doesn't speak, but it doesn't need to. You feel its gratitude like a heartbeat beneath the sand, so you let your eyelids fall. Let your breath slow. Let the night wrap around you, soft as linen, steady as stone. And if you dream, may it be of quiet hallways, steady hands, and laughter echoing off gold. Sweet dreams, keeper of dust. End of script. Sweet dreams.